Have you ever had one of those rocky moments where you succeeded despite all the odds? Well, it happened to me once, and oddly enough, it involved the game of chess. When I was in college, there was a group of us who hung around up in the mezzanine, and we played each other in chess. And like all competitions, there were players of various skill levels. I was solidly a mid-level player. One afternoon, a group of us were hanging around up there, and somehow the subject of me versus one of the better players came up, and the consensus was that I wouldn't last an hour on the chessboard with this guy. So I found myself playing against him. And things went south pretty quickly. I saw one possible line of attack, but it was about 10 or 12 moves down the road, and I didn't think there was any way I could execute that plan without him catching on and thwarting it. But I thought, no guts, no glory, let's give it a shot. So I began moving my pieces into position. Meanwhile, this guy was so preoccupied with attacking that he didn't notice what I was doing. And it came down to his last move, and he studied the board for a while, and then he moved his piece, but he kept his finger on it, which meant that he could withdraw that move if he wanted to. And I just knew that he could see what I was up to. But finally, he pulled his finger away from it. So I advanced my pawn and put his king in check. And he started to move it back, but he couldn't move his king back because that row was protected by a rook that I had put over there all the way across the board. And then he tried to take the pawn, but he couldn't because my queen was protecting that spot. And when he tried to move diagonally, he couldn't because my bishop was protecting that move. So he sat there and studied and studied and studied the board, and meanwhile I leaned back and crossed my arms and I started smiling. Somebody in the audience recognized what had happened and said, "Oh my God." And then the guy I was playing, he did an amazing thing. He took his arm and he knocked all the pieces off the chessboard. I stood up and I had to go catch a bus. Yeah, I was living at home at the time and commuting to college, and I had to catch a bus, so I went down to wait for the bus. And the bus was driven by a friend of mine who had been watching the match, and when I got on the bus, he said, "That was great." And that was it. That was my rocky moment, my moment of glory.